Hi, good afternoon to everyone. My name is Marcello SCALISI. I'm the director of UNIMED, Mediterranean University Union, and I'm honored to moderate the session of this afternoon related to international association and the role of International Association of Universities in this particular situation. We have with us two big players of university networks worldwide, the European University Association president and the president of the International Association of Universities. And I said before during our introduction, we could say two big boss of international relations of universities around the world. I'm very honored to moderate this session with Madam Pam FREDMAN, President of International Association of Universities, and with Mr. Michael Murphy, the President of European University Association. First of all, let me say that for a director of a network of Mediterranean universities, it's a small network of 100 universities from 23 countries of the Euro-Mediterranean region, is really an honor, not only for the participation of two these important representative of networks, but also because I'm sure we will learn more and more from their own perspective and their own presentation. Just a few words about our speakers. Madam Pam FREDMAN served as rector of the University of Gothenburg in Sweden from 2006 to 2017. She is a professor of neurochemistry and has held several leading positions within the university, such as Dean of the Faculty of Medicine. She served as chair of the European Society for Neurochemistry and is a member of the Royal Swedish Academy of Engineering Science. Since 2016, Pam FREDMAN is the president of the International Association of Universities. Mr. Michael Murphy graduated in medicine from University College Cork in 1973. He received his doctorate from the National University of Ireland in 1984. Michael Murphy has held a variety of leadership roles, including president of UCC for a decade, vice chancellor of the National University of Ireland, chair of the Irish University Association. He has been active in many academic organizations in Europe and the United States, and is now the president of EUI, which is the European University Association. We start first with President Pam FREDMAN. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for this nice introduction. And I would like to share my screen now. I'm sending out that message. Let's see, go back. So, thanks you very much for inviting IAU to this conference, which is the focus of internationalization, which has been and must be the heart of higher education, both in research and education. But I will start with presenting IAU as the global voice for higher education and the global network for higher education institutions and organizations. And I will say that internationalization is part of all the activities. So International Association of Universities, IAU, the global voice of higher education. It was created in 1950, celebrating 70 years now, under the auspices of UNESCO. And it's an independent NGO, and it's still an official partner with UNESCO. We have members from 120 countries, and I would like to add to this also that IAU has the World Higher Education Database, which is continuously updated, and thereby we reach out to 20,000 higher education institutions around the world. The vision and the mission of the organization. The vision is to promote and enhance the power of higher education to transform lives and to create insight and find sustainable solutions to local and global challenges. And the mission is to advocate and advance dynamic leadership role for higher education in society. And leadership is crucial to what we do. So it's the defend and articulation of the fundamental values and principles of higher education, a threat, I would say, more than ever, and values as academic freedom, autonomy, but also the societal responsibility and solidarity. The mission is also to respect diversity in higher education as a key to sustainable future. And finally, also to take actions to encourage and facilitate innovation, mutual learning, and cooperation. The vision and mission of the IAU is translated into 4 priority areas. It's value-based leadership, it's internationalization, it's higher education for sustainable development, which we have worked on since the 90s, and digital transformation. And IAU fulfill these goals by expertise development, trend analysis, publications and specialized portals, advisory services, training, and not at least peer-to-peer learning, knowledge sharing events, and global advocacy and representation. But I have to say that during the last year, all IAU activities have been adjusted to meet the consequences of the pandemic for higher education. And we have taken many actions related to the COVID-19 emergencies. It was already in the beginning of the pandemic, IAU performed a survey to get an early view on the consequences of COVID-19. No one could imagine that we more than 1 year later are living with an uncertainty. IAU has arranged webinars on the future of higher education almost every second week, and they are available on homepage. IAU also has provided a resource page to continuously share ongoing activities, reports coming up from all around the world. And with this first global survey, which was in countries which were all at different stages of the pandemic. We should remember that. And no one could foresee the spread and length of the pandemic. And the survey was at that time translated into 3 languages to promote wide response. The main conclusions from this and several national and regional surveys captured the immediate consequences for higher education, consequences that are still ongoing and developing, and with short and long-term effects on higher education. Consequences and lessons learned in forming the future of higher education. For higher educations to transform to meet the global challenges with knowledge and competence relevant for the local needs and with the global responsibility. But transforming without sacrificing its fundamental values, academic freedom, autonomy, solidarity, and social responsibility, to create, develop, and disseminate knowledge through research and education, to foster peace and global sustainable society. The main conclusions, there are many, but the main conclusions I would like to put forward are, it's affected almost all institutions all around the world. And a majority of the institutions closed their campuses partly or completely. There was a shift to online performance. The survey clearly highlighted inequality in this transformation among higher education institutions and societies. That was due to higher education institutions' digital competence, infrastructure in society, such as internet, computer availability, and not at least social factors as overcrowding, physical and psychological disadvantages. And I would say and pinpoint that inequalities, there were large regional variation, but existing in all countries. International conferences in higher education and research meetings, they also went online. And in this case, experience showed many positive effects: increased access, participation, less climate footprints. And for the future, physical meetings must focus on the added value to virtual meetings. There is also one consequence, and that is we have to see the time zones. They have to be considered to allow participations from all continents. International mobility was stopped, both for students and for staff. And IU had already started before the pandemic to promote and cooperate in rethinking internationalization. It was interesting to see that higher education institutions, often said to be ivory towers, slow to react and incapable of change. The pandemic showed the opposite. And although in not all countries, the awareness in society and among policymakers has increased and become valued. Finally, and I would say the most important message is actually that COVID has also opened up for opportunities. And shared experience, cooperation, and mutual trust must lead the higher education into the future of this pandemic. This is just to show what's going on, the crisis and the disrupted crisis. There are challenges and there are risks that we have seen in this, and reduced mobility, financial crisis, including tuition fee, and growing inequality, to mention some. The opportunities on the other side is that we can work for developing the future, because nothing will be the same, to increase access and equality, to contribute to sustainable development through global engagement and local relevance and overall societal relevance. But the way forward needs strategic and holistic approaches, cooperation and less competition, use of technologies, but not at least to rethink internationalization, which I think is on the agenda for many at this time. To follow what's happening, there is a second global survey going on. It's open to 15th of April, and it's open for everyone, so you can see on the homepage and participate. It is to learn more about the consequences, and it's the more answers we get, the better the results will be, and the more value it has. So I would say that this survey, the second survey, has been prepared with a lot of regional and national organization, and EUA is participating in this. So why should you participate in a survey? We know that everyone is tired of surveys coming all the time. And that is that the results hopefully help institutions to benchmark themselves at global, regional, and national level, to share information and understanding with associations, including the IAU, to support higher education sector, to provide accurate data to national authorities for policy development, and last, to inform the UNESCO World Higher Education Conference, which is actually taking place this October. And that will be an important input from the whole sector. So finally, going back to the internationalization, it is in the heart of higher education in research and education. And knowledge should have no borders and has not have and should be shared globally. The digital technology development in higher education and society, starting before, but was very much pushed by the pandemic, gives opportunities, but must be implemented as a complement and not a full replacement to physical human interaction, and that will be something important for the future. I would like to at this end read the definition from IAU, and that is the internationalization is the intentional process of integrating an international, intercultural, or global dimension into the purpose, functions, and delivery of post-secondary education in order to enhance the quality of education and research for all students and staff, and to make meaningful contributions to society. Internationalization is a necessity for quality in higher education and for higher education institutions to fulfill its societal role. Thus, the higher education sector has a responsibility to jointly rethink good quality internationalization with or without physical mobility and with technology combined with physical face-to-face interactions. So with this, I would like to thank you for your attention, and I hope that we can, through mutual trust and cooperation, strengthen the role of higher education for a sustainable future. And IAU will take the responsibility as the global voice for higher education. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam FREDMAN, for your speech, and it's very interesting. I have several comments, but we move first to the next speaker, and then we open the space for debate. And you said correctly that we have to rethink internationalization, and I think that also is important for all our organization to rethink ourselves in some way, because it's a very important moment for all of us. And on this, I will leave Mr. Michael Murphy to deliver his speech.
Thank you very much, Marcello. I liked your phrase, rethink ourselves, because that really could be the title of my talk. It's an honor to be here, and it's a pity that we're not in Istanbul, but the future, with added value, Pam, will bring us to Istanbul. I represent the EUA. It's the voice of Europe's universities, some 850, and national rectors' conferences across the EHEA, the European Higher Education Area, 48 countries. And the story I'm telling began about a year ago because we were at the start of a new decade, 2020. And that's a time when you reflect, you look back on what has been happening, and you try to imagine the future, the next 10 years. But then, as Pam said, COVID came along, a great disruptor. And if pandemics do anything, they tend to add rocket fuel to evolutionary forces. That's been the history of the human species. Now, of course, universities evolve all the time. We have a 1,000-year history, which shows our capacity for evolution, but it tends to be slow. And we felt that something urgent was required. We shouldn't waste a crisis, and that we should engage in a deep reflection on where universities are going, but more importantly, where society is going and how universities must serve into the future. So in the past year, we consulted well over 100 experts in universities, governments, European Commission, business, civic society, and outside Europe on what the future might look like. Now, we have published our thinking a few weeks ago. It's on the EUA website. The first thing we did was to analyze the challenges, and some of those are mentioned by Pam already, but there is a consensus about challenges facing us. Number one, the climate crisis, planetary sustainability. Everybody agrees that this is very urgent, and many universities already have transformed their plans to help society address the SDGs as their primary function. But in Europe, we also have other challenges. We have demographic profile that is changing, falling birth rates, aging populations, and that means that everybody faces lifetime career change. That demands change of us because we must serve lifelong learning. Technological development is, of course, changing our individual lives, but are also disrupting labor markets. And while universities produce much of the knowledge for innovation in technology, we have a big responsibility to ensure that our graduates, the population, are able to cope with digitalization and artificial intelligence. We see lots of economic inequalities. Pam mentioned that they're exacerbated by the crisis. And of course, education is the main enabler of socioeconomic mobility. So learning access, lifelong learning, equity and inclusion will be key concerns for Europe's universities in the coming years, and our student bodies will be more diverse. I need hardly say that democracy is under challenge. Radicalization in society, questioning democratic values, threatening academic freedom, university autonomy, and that's, of course, the whole basis for good scientific progress. We are being challenged. False information, fabricated evidence, alternative truths, they are, of course, undermining the value of evidence and the role of science. So we have to find new ways to counter these challenges in the university sector. And in the big picture, the world is changing geopolitically because there's a multipolar order emerging, more competition between the major regions. And a critical point here is that it's your strengths in research and education and innovation that will determine your success in that new, competitive, and perhaps less cooperative world. We also have to, of course, as universities, think about our safety in partnerships and collaborations across the world as we are facing interference, foreign interference, security threats, and cybersecurity challenges. So again, a new environment. And there's the old challenge that we're never funded well enough to do the job that we need to do as well as we need to do it. And Pam has pointed out that this is likely to get more challenging as a result of COVID. So COVID added rocket fuel to the evolutionary forces, and we have to adapt very quickly to meet those challenges. So again, we found considerable consensus about what we needed to do, or what we must do now, in how the sector responds. And the first concept is the need for more openness. Universities that are more open, more transformative, leading change in society, and of course, by definition, transnational. So we describe future universities as institutions that are without walls, much more open and engaged in society, while retaining our core values, of course. And we have to provide a transnational space for common knowledge production and working with a whole range of new societal stakeholders. So our community of learners will be expanded and will include alumni, more importantly than in the past, and of course, lifelong learning citizens. But we have to do this building bridges between sectors in society and between countries and cultures. Universities will still be places of refuge, testing the new ideas, providing safe space for freedom of expression. But we certainly will be in deeper dialogue with society, involving citizens and other sectors in what we do. We will be hybrid. Pam has pointed that out. It's emerging very clearly from the surveys, both physical spaces and virtual spaces. And we'll have to exploit both in order to engage sufficiently with society and grow the access of which she spoke. So the physical and digital learning environments must be developed in a holistic way, in a cooperative way, and in a mutually supportive way. The campus, physical campus, will remain important as the key place for deep social interaction and for dialogue, challenging encounters, inspirational encounters, and I suppose the quiet spaces for focused learning and research. And the virtual campus will make each university ubiquitous. It will be developed to increase access across the whole of society. We also see universities as being sustainable, diverse, and engaged, adopting the SDGs as our primary mission goal. But we have to be careful because there will be societal imperatives setting out an agenda for us, but we must at the same time protect the freedom of individual researchers and individual academics to pursue knowledge for knowledge's sake, and particularly pursue fundamental curiosity-driven research, which may not be high on the agenda of our main stakeholders. Diversity, social cohesion, critical parts of the sustainable development menu. We will have to provide the scientific mindset that the whole population needs to enjoy and provide learning opportunities to people from very diverse backgrounds, reflecting the diversity of society. Access, equitable and open to everybody. We must, as universities, remain strong supporters of pluralistic democratic society based on evidence-based public policy and public debate. And we must, as Pam indicated earlier, sustain our values at all costs. We will have to be autonomous, the capacity to make strategic choices, because autonomy is fundamental to success in the university mission, especially in research. We have to accept that we will be more accountable, not just to government, but to society as a whole. And we will strongly encourage the involvement of external stakeholders across society in the governance of our institutions, in helping us and advising us to set the curricular agenda and the research agenda. And we must certainly focus on continuous improvement through internal mechanisms, but also always supported by external peer review. So by 2030, our missions will remain the same, but how we deliver them will differ. Learning will not be a teaching exercise. It will be a student-centered, learner-centered process, so that those who come to us will depart for some time as creative and critical thinkers, committed to lifelong learning, entrepreneurial, And we also see that we have a responsibility to make sure that those who spend time with us will leave with skills that are also relevant to the workplace, and to ensure that they are robot-proof, that they will have capabilities that will keep our species ahead of the robots and artificial intelligence. Research will span the spectrum as always, but interdisciplinarity will be critical. Open science is extremely important as part of our openness definition. And we will be supporting a non-commercial and diverse publishing system so that information is available to all who need it, including research data, which can be exploited by others in society and across the planet. Ethics and integrity will play a key role in our mission, combating the current challenges in our democracies. And we have to promote the ethics and integrity among staff, among our students, and among our partners in society. We will be playing a key role in innovation ecosystems regionally. And that's a big opportunity for universities, because we have the potential to be the bridge between the key actors in our regional societies, academia, business, and the social and cultural scene. And finally, we will continue to play a key role in preserving European culture, interpreting society and the human condition. We will be places where culture is created, performed, exhibited, and celebrated. A fundamental part of our duty. So coming to a close, we have to spend just a minute or two on how one converts a vision to a reality, implementation. It's a fact that we're of the view that Europe will only be as successful as its universities will be. And our success depends on a supportive environment, with all who have power over us and who have influence playing their part. The regulatory frameworks must be appropriate, guaranteeing autonomy with accountability. Investment will have to be sufficient to enable us to serve society as we must. And we ourselves must develop strong leadership in order to meet our ambitions. What has to be done will differ, of course, across Europe, but some priorities apply everywhere. We must reform academic careers. This will have to happen if the vision is to happen, is to be achieved. We have to support interdisciplinarity, and we have to work on the civic role of universities in each of our countries. This isn't just a European story, my last point, because universities are global institutions. Most of the challenges I listed are global. Most of the solutions are applicable everywhere. In Asia, university missions are the same as they are in Europe. All that differs is the local environment, the economy, and the regulatory framework. But as Pam said earlier, experience does show us that international cooperation enhances quality of university performance, whether within continents or across continents. We have much to learn from each other, and our open walls demand international collaboration. The fact that we have chosen these sustainable goals as our primary vision objective is an aim that is shared across the entire world. And it's on the basis of this common goal that we can build better shared values, ethics, and approaches. Our plan here is to make sure that Europe's universities do their part, and that we can be the strong partners that everybody else across the world requires. We've got only one planet, and we share it. So I thank you for listening to a snapshot of the messaging from Europe's universities on what we will look like over the next 10 years, and look forward to dialogue and conversation at this point. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael, for your presentation, of the vision of EVA for 2030, and I will come back later with my comments. But first, I have a couple of questions from our participants. The first one is from Julie Pollard, a question to Michael. Sorry, but she has listened to several university leaders discuss the importance of adapting to lifelong learners. However, what actual changes are being made to application, enrollment process, curriculum, assessment, and cost in order to accommodate these learners?
Many. Not enough. We have a long journey ahead. But for example, I'll just take one example, the concept of micro-credentialing.
Exactly.
2 or 3 years ago, we saw that as a threat, that major multinational corporations were taking over our roles. But of course, the reality is we've been doing it for decades. In my university here in the south of Ireland, we began it 80 years ago. We called them certificates, short chunks of learning. But we now see that this is a stepping stone to putting in place the reconstruction of how we do our work. And again, very clearly, we learned during the pandemic that online and virtual learning is a critical part of the lifelong mission. And we don't have to be awake at 2 a.m. in order to reach people who are working at night, because it doesn't have to be real-time learning. The new tools of technology enable us to do a lot. But the full answer to that question would take 20 minutes.
But I see the point. I agree with you, which is not a new issue, but it's something that is already working for many years. But now is a very nice momentum for this micro-credential issue. Pam, please.
Yeah, I would just like to add, as you said, Michael, there are many providers within the lifelong learning system, and I think that we have to accept that, and there is a need for all. But at the same time, it's important that the lifelong learning in higher education, that we really provide with the academic education to these people who wants to come back there.
Thanks. There is another question. Sorry if I move very fast, from Darren McDermott. Do you either, Michael or Pam, see a potential move away from the highly commercial form of internationalization of the recent decades, or it is likely to increase? It's a sort of business question.
I can start.
Please.
I think that it has opened our eyes what the commodification, I would say, of international students that we have done, and we should be self-critical. We have student exchange and student mobility without quality, without reaching the goals of internationalization. And I hope that this stuff, which we have now, is reinforcing our own thoughts and that our own responsibility to see that we have to have quality in what we're doing. On the other hand, this is also to go and say to you have the same situation in Europe in many countries, that you have to say to the governments, if we are going away from just earning money on students, we need to have a support. It's a government support. It has to be a public good with education, and that includes also internationalization. I'm speaking from another country, but I think it's important that we think about this. It's a time, it's an open window to do that.
Michael?
Yes, I think it's going to, commercial internationalization is going to diminish for a variety of reasons. Number one, there will be a consequence to this pandemic, and there's a consequence arising from climate change, whereby the wealth to travel will not be available. Secondly, whereas I do expect that there will be mobility, it will be for shorter periods, and the greater part of the international program will occur through blended learning, the online component. So I see countries that have built economic models around attracting large numbers of students to come and spend in their societies and not just in their universities, I don't see that model persisting.
Thank you. There is another question from Ulgon Cicek. Sorry for my pronunciation, in case I'm wrong. How about acquisition, mergers, takeovers for university in need some parts of the world? It's not clear to me.
Acquisitions. By this you mean wealthy, particularly Western universities, acquiring campuses in other parts?
Yeah, could be.
I'm not sure that model has worked everywhere, certainly. And I think that you will find that governments will be somewhat more wary of foreign institutions coming in, usurping the right of the local society to set the value system in the way that this has happened. In a sense, some might argue that what has been happening is a continuation of a form of imperialism. I don't see that model continuing long term. I would see partnerships, but not acquisitions.
Pam, please.
I would like to add that during this pandemic, it has been obvious that there is more knowledge and recognition of the higher education from society. So I think that the need of interacting with the local questions and challenges and the local provision of students is getting more and more important. And you have to meet also what is needed locally, and maybe that it will change. You cannot do that always by sending other people or having other cultures coming in. We should have a mix, but I think that there is more keen on having their own institutional education and research.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question for both of you, but starting this question, I'm thinking about this question related to the PAM intervention. You say that the university normally are so as incapable to change, or at least very slow to react. In this pandemic situation, they reacted in some way very, very fast, and they showed us their capacity to answer to this pandemic situation. But this will remain, this capacity to, for instance, for the university to answer to crisis situation, independently by the pandemic. Like, for instance, we had the refugees crisis situation some years ago. Unfortunately, the refugees crisis situation is still there. But in countries like Turkey, but also in Europe, but also in the Middle East, for instance, the universities were able to answer. But this capacity to react to this crisis situation will remain as capacity of the system in itself, or just the pandemic and that's it?
I think it will remain. I think it's wrong to say that universities have never changed. They have changed, otherwise we wouldn't be there for centuries. But I think that still, again, the interaction with the local society, the awareness of the needs and the dialogue with the stakeholders, as you said, Michael, for the future, we have to have much more dialogue with the stakeholders. I think that will change, and I think that universities are capable of changing, and maybe not, they should not change too fast. There is a lot of failures in the change to online system, which we have to take care of for the future.
I think we surprised ourselves, to be honest. And we succeed. We discovered that we could change a lot of things that for years were thought to be unchangeable. And having learned that now, and having broken some of the chains of conservatism, I suspect that you will find that universities will exhibit a far higher capacity for change than you would have expected in 2019. And I think we also have developed an optimism that perhaps wasn't there. The very fact that it was possible to develop a vaccine within, 8 months into the human, when it previously took 7 years, and the part played by universities in this regard. The part played by university derived evidence in informing public policy that has, as I said somewhere recently, has ensured that at this point we have fewer than 3 million deaths, when the figure would have been 200 million at the rate seen in 1919. And most of this based on science and its application. I think we have got, we've learned we can do a lot more than we thought we did. And I'm an optimist.
Thank you. I have a last question for both of you, again in 1 minute each, possible. You both discussed about autonomy, and autonomy is also related to each political system and political freedom in some way. There are countries, obviously, which is quite difficult to move about autonomy. What about how to create a sort of worldwide alliances among university network to support universities to achieve this goal of autonomy?
I think that is something that we have to do. We can do jointly to see to that we keep those values. And then if we stick together, if we constantly bring this up, and we can show that, for example, Europe, we all stick together to the same basic fundamentals and the basic principles. And that is to show also the rest of the world, which might in some cases even have it worse when it comes to this autonomy. So I think that sticking together and standing behind this all the time, I think that we can do. Then we have to accept autonomy is not the same thing when it comes to regulations and all this in all countries, and we should not try to make that similar everywhere.
Sure.
Keep reminding people that the evidence shows that those systems that restrict autonomy are the poorest performing when it comes to new discovery and innovation in society. We must keep pointing out that fact.
Thank you very much for your inspiring speeches, also for the debate. I thank all the participants for not only for the question, but for their participation. I hope that this was useful for all of you, and I think that there is a lot of room for discussion, and I will invite all of you to share this debate about internationalization of our institution, of our universities more and more, to remain connected, at least in this virtual dimension. Thank you very much. Have a nice rest of the day. Bye. Thanks,
Marcello.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Pam.
Bye.